Well, one thing led to another, and I got my cursed computer back. Long story short, I tried to upgrade the motherboard on my main rig. Obviously, I don't have it here with me anymore. And it more or less killed my Ryzen 5 5600G. I did RMA it. I should hopefully hear back next week at some point because I did ship off the processor. So for the time being, I'm going to be getting this thing back again. Now I still need to set up for my personal use because there is still stuff that's, well, I set it up for my father, so I need to upgrade the RAM. I need to remove one of the drives. And I also need to attach my 2 terabyte drive and whatnot. There's some bits and pieces that I need to do. Now, I did end up giving me my father something different that's more for what he needs. Again, he really used this thing for streaming, which for the specs and whatnot that are inside this thing are complete overkill. So the computer I got him is pretty janky, but again, he really doesn't use this thing that often. When he does, he's just streaming Hulu and whatnot. Here's the computer I came up with. I'm using a Intel i5 or my Intel i5 2400, 6 gigs of RAM that I'm going to upgrade to 8 whenever the 8 gig comes in, my 750 Ti, and the 600 watt power supply from my original desktop. Reason being because, well, my small form factor case can't utilize the power supply and whatnot. And the motherboard I'm using is a $35 Intel motherboard I got off eBay. Which is funny because a $35 used Intel motherboard from eBay of all things works completely fine. Why Amazon MSI board shot the whole computer and killed the processor. And I don't know what to say about that, but I haven't had any luck with AMD nonetheless. Eventually we'll probably get a case for this computer, but my father might actually keep it this way because he thinks it looks cool, which it kind of does. But in the end, it's going to be set up like this for now, and I know it's stable and I know it works. Again, all I use it for streaming, and this is more than enough for it. Now, the only other reason why I was okay with my father giving me this thing back is because I think I might be able to get it functioning properly once I get my 5th gen Ryzen replacement back. Because I believe I stated this before, but I'll state it again. There's probably some weird incompatibility with my 1st gen Ryzen and my RX 6600 XT. I don't know why that is, but that's the only thing I could think of. Obviously, I need to go into the BIOS and set the PCI slot to PCI Gen 3. I do want to get a Gen 4 riser cable for this case here, but for the life of me, I can't find it. Or if I can find one that's the proper length, I don't know if I'll be buying a cable from a company that actually knows what they're doing, or if I'm just going to be buying a cheapo cable that's going to shit itself within 3 days of use, which is something I don't want to happen with this thing. Now that said, if this thing does die on me, I did talk to my father asking what the next step would be, and the next step is going to be just buying me a whole new computer. It's going to be a pre-built, and it's most likely either going to be a Dell or an HP, one of those like very proprietary computers. That way, so it basically forces me into the system and doesn't allow me to upgrade. Even though I'll be going to Intel and NVIDIA, I'd rather be locked that way so I'm forced to not upgrade and not have to go through this bullshit all over again. Which I know is not the PCMR way, but we spent, God, like maybe $2,000 now trying to get me a fucking main desktop that doesn't want to die on me. So if we're going to spend another grand, we're going to spend another grand on a proprietary computer and just use that. So with that said, I guess the first actual major thing I want to do is I'm going to pull the Wi-Fi card out of the motherboard. Reason being, the Wi-Fi card in this is a Wi-Fi 6 card from Intel. The Wi-Fi card in my laptop right here is a MediaTek Wi-Fi 6. The MediaTek name should let you know exactly why I'm removing the Intel card from the motherboard. The Wi-Fi card on this thing is hot ass. It drops like a motherfucker and is really annoying. Alright, so I popped off all the little special stuff over the I/O plate and whatnot. And here is the Wi-Fi card I gotta steal. So I'm going to unscrew it and steal it. Alright, so here's the Reddit page of where I found out that I could use an Intel Wi-Fi card. And right down here, someone mentions a AX200 or AX210. The Wi-Fi card I just stole from the motherboard is an AX200, which may not be the newest, but still Wi-Fi 6, and compared to the MediaTek chip, this one shouldn't have the dropout issues in general overall ill performance of that MediaTek chip. So I'm going to go into the kitchen and put this into the laptop and come back. I already did a NVMe upgrade to 2 terabytes. The Wi-Fi card I'm looking for is underneath this, so I'll be right back. And here is that Garbo MediaTek chip that I was talking about. So the next thing I gotta do is put this in the trash and put this in the laptop. Seems like Windows already had the drivers baked in for my Wi-Fi 6 card, so that's good. Next thing to do is just load up Minecraft and see what the ticks per second are like in the Anarchy server I play on. Alright, so I got everything back up and running, and the easiest way to know if I'm going to have issues is by walking around and monitoring the TPS in Minecraft. As you can tell, I am on an Anarchy server. This Anarchy server is in the EU from what I remember. And yet, as you can tell, my TPS is still basically fantastic. Now, the reason why I'm actually in the kitchen to do this is because this is the worst case scenario, because the Wi-Fi router is behind 2 walls and this big metal fridge. So the 5G band is having a very hard time to puncture all this, all the wood, drywall, and everything. And yet, it's able to maintain its TPS, connection's completely fine. I'm able to run Minecraft as if I was on a wired connection, which is something I can't say about this MediaTek chip. This one will be going to like 15, 12 TPS, and when it comes to downloading stuff, it would drop every single time. A few days ago, when I got this thing all set up with a 2 terabyte drive, I decided to download Genshin Impact, and this card here would drop constantly. It took what normally should be like a 15-minute download to around 2.5 hours because it constantly dropped, and I had to constantly restart the stinking download because it would break it. That's how bad this chip is. Now, that said, the Bluetooth on this chip is completely fine. So I'm still going to put this on the motherboard I sold the Intel chip from and whatnot, because I still want to have Bluetooth and whatnot. And occasionally, if I want to do wireless stuff, I can do it with this. This thing should be able to at least handle web browsing, I think. But yeah, this MediaTek chip is a piece of shit. And I really wish ASUS would ship these Zephyrus G14s and whatnot with the proper Intel Wi-Fi chips, because, again, this chip is a piece of shit. So with that out of the way, I guess I'll come back when I guess I'll get back to getting my main desktop back together. Alright, got the MediaTek chip in here now. The only hard part will be getting drivers for it, though I believe I can go onto ASUS's own website and just download the drivers from there. But with that, the real fun part, getting the backplate and all the sheathing all back installed. I think I remember how I did it. If not, I can probably look at a tutorial online, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Alright, got my 16 gigs of RAM installed. The next thing to do is install my 2 NVMe drives. I'm going to use the 1 terabyte drive out of my laptop since I now have a 2 terabyte in it. And I'm going to use the 500 gig drive I initially had as a extra bit of storage, that way, so I have a 1.5 terabyte of physical SATA storage, and then the rest of my storage is going to be a mixture of hard drives, of basically a few laptop drives, and a 3.5-inch mechanical spool drive. So with that said, I'm going to more or less get the NVMe drives installed and come back. Alright, I got the motherboard back in the case. I re-screwed in the power supply. Now I gotta attach the hard drive to this little bracket right here. The problem is the hard drive I'm going to be using, a 500 gig Western Digital, is inside a Mac Mini, so I gotta tear that apart now. So I'm gonna actually go into the kitchen that way, so I can keep everything self-contained, so I don't mix up screws and whatnot. So I'm gonna tear apart the Mac Mini off camera, steal the hard drive, and come back. Well, I sacrificed one of the little SATA power connectors from my Core Master power supply. I can get another one if I need to. Reason why I did that is because I want to try and make this thing look nice and clean. So as you can tell, I have my 3.5 inch drive up here, and with the way I was originally going to do it, the power cable will just be going up like this, and it'll look uglier than sin. So what I want to try and do is I want to try and snake it along here. And also, I have a 4-pin or 4 SATA little adapter right here, but they're not long enough. And plus, I actually plan on sticking another hard drive down here, hence why I want to have this one free from when I do that. And I really couldn't do that if I was going to stick it like this. So that's another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I can snake a SATA cable down here too, unless I can find one that's black and long enough so I can snake it. But what I need to do now is I need to cut the black cables off this thing and basically solder on this. So I'll come back when I get all this figured out in probably like maybe 30 or 40 minutes. I may have made it a tad too long, but that's exactly how I want it because I want to make sure I have enough room to move the cable from when I attach the hard drive here. I don't have the drive I want to use yet because I have to order it off Amazon. But I'm thinking it's going to be a simple 1 terabyte Seagate drive. I want to try and grab a 2 terabyte Seagate drive. Obviously, it's going to be a normal hard drive, but I do want to have storage. And since this is my main rig and I have so much crap, I want to make sure this thing has ample storage. Alright, so I got everything all up and ready to go. I don't really have a proper SATA cable for this because I need a reverse 90 degrees so I can have a proper SATA cable to go from basically the hard drive, go to here and then like this. So for right now, I'm just going to have this ugly little line. Once I make sure the SATA power is not properly wired right, I'll go back and properly mount this. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it hanging so I can easily do a quick disconnect. So since I got all the hard drives and everything installed, next thing I gotta do is, well, test it. So I'm going to hook everything up and we're going to see what happens. Now for video output, I am using my RX 580. The only reason why I'm using that is because I know it will fully work with my first gen Ryzen 1600 right here. That's of course on the motherboard. I'll obviously be swapping that out for my Ryzen 5 5600G when that comes in from AMD in probably like a few weeks or so. So with that said, I'm going to see if I can get Windows installed on this thing and if everything works right. Alright, I disconnected the power to both the hard drives because I don't want to accidentally install to something that I shouldn't. So all that's showing up now is the 1 terabyte NVMe and the 500 gig NVMe. Obviously I'm going to install to the 1 terabyte. Now, this gigabyte board works last I checked. So theoretically, I should be able to install Windows 10 Pro on the 1 terabyte NVMe drive, which is something I couldn't do with the MSI board that killed my Ryzen 5 5600G. So I'll come back if something goes wrong. Alright, $64 question. Will it restart? Hey, it restarted. What would happen is that if it is out with the old MSI board, it would error out saying unable to restart. But of course, it restarted here, and now it's going to the out-of-box experience, or it might actually boot right back to the thumb drive. But yeah, everything seems to be working completely fine. One thing certain, my secondary rig really did not like going from a RX 580 to a NVIDIA card. I went back to my GTX 950 and it had to force restart itself because they didn't want to display an image, but luckily it was able to restart. So now I gotta reinstall the drivers for this card. With that said, the desktop I'm working on, it's fully booted into Windows and I got both drives showing, so next thing I gotta do is shut it down, connect these two drives, get them set up and properly named, and then just install all the proper updates and whatnot on drivers and run this thing for a while. So I just sat for like a good 15 minutes waiting for it to get to the next step of where it actually installs updates. And remind you, I'm using a 1TB boot drive as, well, the main boot drive. It's like I'm back on a hard drive with how slow Windows 10 is. God, I don't even want to try Windows 10 on a spinning mechanical drive. Alright, got the cursed computer all set back up again. It's still using my first gen Ryzen and my RX 580. But it is still cursed. How cursed? The RGB strip on the motherboard where you can see one single little LED diode right there. Let's say I have it set to orange. The motherboard will be orange, but the RGB strips I'm using will be set to blue. So there's some weird configuring error with the RGB strips. Now luckily when it comes to RGB, I just set it to white anyways, so I don't really go for rainbow barf. And the only reason why we did rainbow barf on this one right here is because, let's be fair, if I'm using this computer, I'm looking like right here and I really don't notice the RGB barf. And since it's slow, it's totally fine for me. But since I'm going to be looking at this thing on a daily basis, I just have it set to white. And of course, if I turn off the light right here, that's more or less what it looks like. Granted, the monitor's kind of blocking it. There you go. Overall, it still looks decent. It's still very much cursed. But what I'm doing right now is I'm waiting for Genshin Impact to download so I can tune the fan curve. I am using a Noctua fan at the very back right here. I'm using one of the Noctua fans I actually had in this case right here. So I stole a Noctua fan from here, but again, this is my secondary rig and it's not really necessary, especially considering I'm using a GTX 950 now. So what I need to do now is I need to play a game and let the computer heat up. And once the computer heats up, I can figure out how to properly tune everything. So I'm going to, I'm going to do all that and come back. Alright, it's the next day. The computer rebooted without an issue, which is what I expect considering I am using my first gen Ryzen and my RX 580. I never had any issues with these two components paired together. The real question will be what will happen when I pair my RX 6600 XT with my Ryzen 5 5600G replacement. I got the email saying that it's supposed to be here, or the replacement is supposed to be here within 5 days. So I'm thinking maybe around Monday or so I'll be getting that component and I'll be doing the CPU swap and GPU swap. Theoretically, since I was able to run those two components in my old ASRock board before the ASRock board died on me, those two components should still function completely fine on this Gigabyte board. I may need to go into the BIOS and manually set the PCI slot to Gen 3, even though I have it set to auto and it should just auto to Gen 3, but you never know at this point. But that'll be the real test. So when it comes to this video, I think I'm more or less done. The major next thing I gotta do is hope to God my video editor of choice actually edits and renders this video out correctly, because the one I've been using recently has not been working right, and I think I'm going to use my Mac Mini, and since it's the base model, only has 4 gigs of RAM, so it's going to take a little while to render out because I'll be using Final Cut Pro on it. But theoretically, since it's an actual Mac product, it should work completely fine. So with that said, that's pretty much it for the video, and the next video will be me doing the upgrade and seeing if this system actually comes back to life. Theoretically it should, but it is the cursed computer after all.